Reason I teach tarot and the reason why I recommend people learn tarot is because it's quite easy to learn compared to I would say astrology, because I'm currently learning astrology and it does take out a lot of time, it does take out a lot of mental space because it's more analytical. So for tarot, as long as you are able to like your imagination is okay, you are able to like pick up tarot quite fast. And the best part about tarot when compared to astrology is that you don't need a birth time, because a lot of people they don't know their birth time, which means that for astrology it's quite tough to be able to accurately read someone's chart if you don't have their birth time. And for tarot itself as well, I rarely use it for fortune tellings. And I think the best part of a tarot that not a lot of people know, especially since there's like a misconception that tarot is only for fortune telling. It's like, oh, what's gonna happen to me, blah blah blah. But currently there's a really great trend of using tarot for self-care. Even surprisingly, I was reading like a newspaper article is that a real psychologist using tarot cards as a way to help their clients as well, because even the clients are like, even the clients themselves is kind of like, do you know astrology, do you know tarot? So even psychologists and also counselors are like going into tarot, so it's really getting super mainstream. And here's what we're going to cover today, and if there's any more questions you can put up in the chat box. So the chat box to me is on the right, which I think is on the left. So what we're covering today is number one, the tarot deck I recommend for learning. Number two, we're going to be talking about the structure of a tarot deck, because the tarot deck, there are 78 cards, and then if you go in like 78 cards, your head would be like boom, blown, and you just like, you don't know where to start. So I'm going to show you where we're going to start, and it's going to be much easier that way. And then, so we are also going to dive into the minor arcana. I'm going to explain what they are. So in the minor arcana, there are several elements. We're going to talk about them briefly because during the class itself, I will dive deeper into the meanings. And of course, if I teach now, right, then basically no one has to come for the workshop and it won't be covered in 1 hour. Then afterwards, we're going to also talk about court cards, what the hell they are. And then we are also going to talk about how to formulate a question for tarot, because I had some queries. I also did I think it's an IG story, or I think it's a Facebook Live, where I talked about if your tarot readings aren't accurate, what might be wrong. So one of the reasons what you have not been doing correctly. Also don't want to like pretend that everything I say is correct. So everything I say is how I do things and it has worked for me. And if like further down the road you realize that there are some things that suits you better, you can do that as well. So definitely there's no like, it's not dogma. It's basically not like 1 + 1 = 2. It's like, it's more fluid that way. So I'm gonna like let you know how to formulate a tarot question, and also I'm also gonna like do steps of like how to conduct a reading. And so the first thing we're gonna talk about is the tarot deck I recommend for learning. So I recommend the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck. You might have been like, oh, she keeps talking about it, why? So I have here, and basically I have about 4 different editions of Rider-Waite-Smith like littered around my room. So some of them are like in the tin. Tin is one of my favorites, and then there are some like practice decks that I can cut, that I can like draw things on, because they're like one of the cheaper decks. So the reason I teach with the Rider-Waite-Smith is because it's one of the most popular tarot deck, and it's also easy to interpret because of the pictures. So the pictures tell stories in a pretty easy way, because if you're just starting out tarot and then you don't want to memorize, because I don't recommend memorizing. Memorizing just makes you feel like, oh, am I doing right, am I doing wrong? So the reason I choose Rider-Waite is because the stories that you can tell from it is so, and I wanted to compare it. I don't know whether you can see the video. Is like basically I'm gonna try and share. Uh, Let me see if I can pause sharing. So my sharing is paused. So hopefully that you can see it is this. So this is the one of the like not very interpretive tarot decks, and I don't recommend using that because you can't tell stories from it, and when you can't tell stories from it, it's so much harder to try to learn, try to use it, and then it just makes you more like defeatist. So I don't recommend using those. And also one of the reasons we use the Rider-Waite-Smith is because the meanings are available online. And this is very, I can't state how very important it is, because when you're learning, you might not have books with you, you might not have like materials with you, and the only way you can learn like and then like quickly find the meanings is googling online. And when you have the Rider-Waite-Smith tarot deck, when you google it, it's the same meaning. So there's no like nuance because it's boring. One of them is boring and it's the same everywhere. So that's why I recommend using that. So we're gonna dive into the structure of a tarot deck because, as you know, when you like get your first tarot deck, you're like, oh my god, there are 78 cards there. What do I do? And you freak out. The funny thing about me is that when I first started learning tarot, I didn't know there were 78 cards. I did not know that at all. I was like, this is fine, you know. There's only 22 cards because I started with 22 major arcana cards, and I thought that was it. And then later, when I went to like another bookstore and got like the real deck, I was like, oh shit, there are so many decks. So there's so many cards. So which also means that if you're just starting out, it is okay to just use the major arcana only. So I'm gonna also jump into what the major arcana are. So the structure of a tarot deck is that there's 78 cards, and among those, 22 are major arcana, and then the rest of them, 56, are minor arcana cards. So the major arcana looks like this, and this is also the way of how I recommend you like rearrange your major arcana cards. Some people are like, oh no, when do you actually need to rearrange your cards? So you don't really need to rearrange your cards unless you feel that the readings you've been doing has been a bit stale, or that you just want to like, you know, reshuffle the energy of the deck. So I'm not really like an expert in energy stuff, but it's also a way to make me feel like maybe my card is a bit more clean this way. So this is how I recommend you rearrange your cards. So you start from 0, then you imagine that there's a grid. So there's 1 to 5, and then from 1 downwards is a 1, 6, 11, 16, if my math is right. So then you rearrange everything that way. Rearrange everything that way so that it's much easier versus like trying to like rule a huge row of cards. This is much easier. So that's the major arcana cards, and then we dive into the minor arcana cards. So the minor arcana cards include 4 different elements. We're going to describe it later. It includes 4 different, you see 4 different rows here, and the 4 different rows has 1 to 10, and also 4 court cards. So we're going to dive into the different minor arcana. So we have the cups. So the cups is water element. It's more on the heart stuff. So if you think about anything that's warm and fuzzy, anything that relates to the heart, it's the minor in the cups suit for the minor arcana. So we have 1 to 10 here, and also we have the swords. So in contrast to the heart, the cups, which is like the heart, the swords is more like the brain side. So it's an air element. It's a brain-based logic, communication, reasoning, and also pain. So surprisingly, the sword suit has a lot more heavy cards, a lot more painful cards. So that's why I put it there. And then the only reason there's pain is because you've been thinking of it too much, you know. And then we also have the wands. So the wands is fire element. It's about passion, energy, and ambition. And then we also have the pentacles. So the pentacles is earth. So when you imagine earth, it's like very solid, it's very grounded. So it's really about money, stability, and also work. And I put this last because people like money, and I want people to like the last part of the class. So I put this last. And then we also have the court cards. So the court cards is a bit tricky to read because sometimes you want to know like when a court card appears, does it refer to a person or does it refer to like a energy you need to embody? There's so many ways of seeing the court cards, but I just put them here. The court cards has the page. From the right side, from the page, the knight, the queen, and the king. So they all represent different phases of like a journey. So different phase of a journey, and then that's also how you can remember it easier. So for example, pages are new beginnings, so people are excited. Knights are people who have already learned the knowledge and they're able to implement. Then queens are more like the motherly figure, like taking care of people, while the kings are leaders. So it's one of the easier ways to learn. How to formulate a good tarot question. So a lot of times when we are reading tarot, so I was saying that sometimes when you don't understand what the cards mean, it's because your question wasn't very clear. And by only having clear questions, you ever have to have clear answers. So so for example, some people come to me and say, I have a career problem, and I'm just like, okay, what specifically about your career problem can you tell me? So when you have a big problem, it's a big one, know what are the little elements you want to know. So for example, I have a career problem. So it might be that you cannot get along with your boss. Okay, then we want to know maybe, why you can't get along with your boss, and also like how does your boss see you? How do you see your boss? And maybe like what the central problem is, and also an action step to take. So in this case, a big question itself, a big problem itself, we have divided into 5 tiny questions. And these 5 tiny questions are able to be answered by one card each. So in contrast to I have a career problem, what to do? And then you pull like Mother of Cups, be more nurturing, be more caring. And it's like, huh? I don't get it. So when you are able to like divide it into smaller questions, that is when you are able to be more specific about your question. And point number 2 about how to formulate a good tarot question, it's you really want to have open-ended questions that, and also action-oriented like questions as well. So for example, a lot of people say, does he love me? I do those types of readings. So I have this like super popular reading called, it's like, how do they feel about me? And I love doing it on myself as well. So basically it's a 5 card question. We will do that during the workshop itself, or you can find it on my website as well. So it's a 5 card question, 5 card question where we examine how the other person feels about you, how you feel about them, how they feel about themselves in the relationship, how you feel about yourself in the relationship, and also an action step to take. So it means that one big question, like does he love me, is divided into so many things, because in real life the only thing we can control is ourselves. And in real life there are so many angles of looking at the things, that is why we have so many different ways of like dissecting a question. And you might be thinking, oh my god, YQ, that sounds horrible, that sounds so hard. I cannot do that. You can do that, because you don't have to start from scratch. You don't have to be like, oh my gosh, does he love me? What do I need to like think about? What you want to do is actually just Google. So tarot spread for does a guy like me? And then you might find like a bajillion spreads that relates to that, because on the internet there are so many kind souls that have like dug deep into problems and they have helped us solve them, and you can just use their cards, use their spreads. So I have a friend who basically just uses like other people's spreads, while for myself is that I like to create my own, because I feel more intimate with it. I feel, and I also sometimes feel like other people's spreads I don't get it. So that's just me. And the more you practice with other people's spreads, the more you are able to actually see, oh, oh, I haven't realized that I can ask things in this angle. Oh, I haven't realized that we can do these things this way. And the more I was going to say adventure experience you accumulate from that, the more you're able to come up with better questions. How to do a reading, whether she should change her current job. So she's been in her job for 7 years, and she's asking whether she should change her job. So in this case, right, what we're going to do is we are going to, for my tarot readings, what I give, like there's a deadline to it. So I feel that the answers can last up to 3 months if there's no major change in the situation. And of course, a lot of people say, oh my gosh, my cards are so bad, I don't know what to do. You can change it. If you have like a bad reading, you just pull one more card, what action I can take to overcome it. It's not like the card is bad and you're stuck with it. Okay, so that's great. What I'm going to do is we are going to ask like in the next 3 months whether you should change your job or not, because I know that a lot of people like are like collecting bonus now and then they don't want to leave. But we will just do a simple yes or no spread. So basically I'm going to pull 2 cards. One is for yes and one is for no. So in the next 3 months, whether you should change your job or not. So this is yes. I'm just going to put it down here first, and this is no. And for this one is basically instead of just asking yet whether you should or not, we're examining if you leave. If you leave, what's gonna happen, and then we're also examining if you don't leave, what's gonna happen. Because for myself, I feel that the future is not written down yet, which also means that you are able to make a choice, and you are able to use tarot to see like what might be the better steps to take. So I'm gonna reveal the cards. This is yes. So yes is the Page of Swords, and no is the Page of Wands. So both are very like vague cards, because both are like new beginnings. So I feel that if you stay, oh no, should you leave or not? Yes, you should change. And then okay, so if you change, right, you might be going into a new industry where you need to like learn things, like learn new things that relates to the logic and relates to the mind. But if you stay, interestingly, I'm hoping you guys can see this card. So this is the Everyday Witch Tarot, which is not the Rider-Waite. So basically, the Everyday Witch Tarot's page of wands is different because there's a sense of like looking at other directions, looking at other choices that you might be missing out. So it doesn't really tell us what's happening. So there is no real concrete like whether you should or not, but if you don't leave, you will feel that you're missing out on something else. So in this case, because it's like, oh my gosh, it's so confusing, I don't know what to do, you just pull more cards. So for example, it's so confusing. We're just gonna pull one more card that what would help you like make the decision. So okay. So it's the moon. The moon came out for what is able to help you make decisions. I don't think you're able to make decisions now because it's a super confusing period for you now. So the moon is about confusion, about like things might not be what they really are. So I think in the next 3 months, don't really think about moving or not, and just stay there and kind of like observe what's happening and see what's happening. And if you do have like big news that can change this direction, then make your choice then, because the cards are saying that for now it's pretty, both paths are okay, but because the situation is a bit murky now, you're not able to really see the future and see like what is happening so that you can make a better choice. So for now, maybe just stay put. Yeah, you've been there 7 years. You can handle 3 more months. And of course, if there's any major changes, so for example, your boss suddenly comes out and says, "Sorry, I'm leaving. Bye, guy. Hey, bye, guy. Bye, guys." Then you can do a new reading. Or you have found a job that you really like, you can do readings to like examine, whether that's suitable for you or not. So that is how we do a reading. But the ways of interpreting the reading is fluid as well. So there's many ways to interpret the readings. What we're going to do at the workshop is we are going to learn the traditional meaning, and I'm also going to like let you know that it is okay to let your intuition guide you as well when you're doing a reading. And the reason I do both like book meaning and intuition reading, because some people basically is like they only just want to be like, I'm so intuitive, I everything is based on what my heart tells me. I don't do that, because if you do not learn the traditional meaning, there are some things you might miss out, because our life experience is only this much. And by like reading other people's interpretation of a card, we can add so much more knowledge of what a card might be. So I don't recommend pure intuitive readings, because um, I just don't think that we're smart enough to be that. I mean, I know you guys are super smart, but um, there are also a lot of smart people out there that we can learn from. So that is how we do a reading.